Hi, this is Ken McCarthy, and we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the System Seminar. And right now we're talking about books. And if you missed yesterday's, definitely make sure you listen to it. And I would strongly recommend that you listen to the day before yesterday too. Most people just do not get the power of books. And if you get it, hey, you'll enjoy the story anyway. But if you don't get it, this could be the most transformative thing in your entire life, honestly. So let's talk about another book that I like. So yesterday I talked about one title, the number one book that I would recommend people get and read and study. Maybe it's because it was one of the first things I read and it had such a big impact on me, but when I reread it, I'm always amazed at what a great, insightful book it is. In fact, I get more from it every time I read it, which, by the way, is a phenomenon. If you've never experienced it. It's funny, people will listen to a song over and over, but very few people will read a book over and over. If it's a good book, I guarantee the second time through you're going to see things you did not see the first time. And that will happen the third time you read it, and the fourth time, and the fifth time. It's just, a good book will give endlessly. And I would almost say it's better to get one good book and really read it. Several times than it is to just sort of read a smattering of random stuff. And the tragedy of our era is people do spend a lot of time reading. They're reading Facebook posts, Twitter posts, fake news, bullshit, news media stuff. Reading a book that's stood the test of time is worth 10,000 times the time you would spend reading that internet crap. Anyway, my second book that I strongly recommend is John Capel's Tested Advertising. And I always tell people 4th edition or earlier. And if you've ever seen anybody else say that, I can show you that they got it from me. The reason this is important is, like all of us will eventually, John Caples died. And after keeping the book at a really high level for all the different editions, it got in the hands of some idiot editor who converted it into something that was more, I don't know, college course friendly. I don't know what they were thinking, but they ruined the book, absolutely ruined it. So, and I only learned this because I was recommending tested advertising methods to people, and one person sheepishly wrote to me and said, I don't get it. This isn't really, I'm not feeling this book. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And then he showed me the edition he had, and I read it, and I was like, this is a disgrace. So I started, 20 years ago, telling people get 4th edition or earlier. If you see it, grab it. There is a limited number of them. Luckily, they printed a lot of them. That's the good news. The bad news is now that I've told people to get it, people snap it up pretty fast when there is an edition available. I do. If I see that there's tested advertising methods, 4th edition or earlier, in decent shape, I will buy it instantly, because it's not like they're not available, but they're not plentiful. Now, if you can't find that book, because thousands of people are going to be hearing this, and there are not thousands of copies available, anything that he wrote before that 5th edition of tested advertising, before it was mangled by the editor, is good, right? So you cannot go wrong with John Caples. So he was a guy, I believe, if I have the story correct, was trained in the Navy as an engineer. And it's surprising, it's not unusual for engineers to be pretty good direct marketers, because people with an engineering mindset are really into results, and they're into things that work, and they're interested in theory to the degree that it helps you find things that work. They're interested in mechanisms. That's not going to be enough to succeed, but it's a big help. That kind of mindset really helps. So as a young man, out of the service, looking for a job, he kind of liked to write, and got a job with an ad agency. And one of the very first ads he wrote is an ad you may recognize. It's called "They Laughed When I Sat Down at the piano, but when I played, or something like that. And it's a full-page ad, and it tells the story of somebody who was secretly teaching himself to play the piano, and one night at a party revealed himself and dazzled all his friends. It's a great story. It's a great story. What nobody will tell you about that ad, if you're an ad person, you certainly know the ad, but only 1 out of 100 knows the rest of the story. That full-page ad was only a lead generator. It was not designed to sell anything. It was designed to get you to ask for more information. And if you're new to marketing, that's called a two-step. And that's a really important distinction. That's a really important distinction. Many things cannot be sold in a one-step. They're too complicated, they're too expensive, they're too involved, they're too elaborate. What you really need is an ad for the ad. And that's what they laughed when I sat down at the piano. It was an ad for the ad. So if you don't know that and try to make it into a one-step, it won't work. But in any event, he wrote that as a young guy. He was in his 20s, and that ad's been copied, and because it's such a powerful headline and such a powerful story. But he didn't stop there. He stayed in the advertising business, I believe, until the 80s. So that's about 60 years. And he was extremely interested in what worked and what didn't work, thus tested advertising. Having an engineering mindset, he really wasn't interested in being fancy for the sake of being fancy or being creative for the sake of being creative. He wanted to know what worked and what didn't work. So for 60 years, he tracked the results of all his ads. And because he was working for a big agency and also had friends throughout the advertising world, he would get their data too. And that's the engineering mindset, right? And he gathered all this data and systematized it and put it into tested advertising methods. I guarantee somebody could take that book, turn it into a $5,000 course. And the people that took the course would be completely satisfied with what they learned from it. There are a lot of books out there like that. But tested advertising methods is one of them. David Ogilvy refers to the content of tested advertising methods, but for some odd reason he never gives John Caples his due. I don't know why that is. Maybe he was afraid that if people could put their hands on John Caples' book, they wouldn't need him. That's how powerful that book is. So I strongly recommend that if you're interested in this world of marketing and advertising, that you make sure that's by hook or by crook, somehow you get your hands on a copy of either Tested Advertising, 4th edition or earlier, or something written before the publishers destroyed the integrity of Caples' ideas. It's a really good book. And I'll tell you one of the things it has in it that's so powerful, and I put this in my my advanced master class on copywriting and infomarketing, is that it contains basically it gives you a machine for cranking out headlines. It gives you a set of formulas that you can just sit down and I'll give you a little secret about headlines, because they're the most important thing, right? In fact, that was what David Ogilvy talked about when he referred to but didn't name John Caples. He said there's a case where one headline outsold another headline by a factor of, I don't know, it was some huge number like 32 times. And I absolutely believe that's possible. So headlines are really important. Headlines are the ad for the ad, right? If the headline doesn't grab you, you're not going to read the ad. And if you don't read the ad, there's no chance the ad's going to sell. It's sort of logical, but people sometimes don't think that through. The headline is everything. And one of the ways to come up with good headlines, which is a $1 million skill, is just to know how to mechanically generate scores of headlines for any given product or any given offer. And then you just, lay them all out in front of you, and you will see one that will emerge that really works. Or very often you'll see how to mix and match, take part of one headline and include it with another headline. And if you're a creative sort of person, this is a great way to be creative. Getting through all the rudiments, all the basics, all the fundamentals. And sometimes when you do that, the creative idea pops out. It's the most reliable way to come up with a good headline. So you just got a great tip on how to write headlines. It's actually big. It's really more than a tip. It's a very, very powerful skill, which I believe anybody can develop. But the reason people don't develop it is they don't understand what it takes to write a good headline. Good headlines don't pop into your head spontaneously, and we'll talk about some other ways to do headlines in future calls. But for now, we're going to leave it at that. John Caples, Tested Advertising Methods, 4th edition or earlier. Definitely listen to the previous call if you missed it, because I mentioned a book in that call that is absolutely essential too. See you next time.